You see, when you truly touch a man's soul, it's not just about the way you look. It's not the way you dress or how perfect you try to be. It's the way your spirit shows up when the world tries to harden him and you bring him peace. That's what he remembers. It's how your presence calms his storms and how your silence feels louder than a crowd when he's around you. And suddenly he don't have to fight. He don't have to pretend. He don't have to be the strongest man in the room. He can just breathe because your energy feels like home. He feels seen, not judged. He feels chosen, not compared. And that kind of connection doesn't fade. When you touch his soul, you rewrite what love means to him. You open a place inside him that he didn't even know needed healing. When you touch a man's soul, his eyes change when he looks at you because now it's not desire, it's gratitude, it's awe, it's respect. He sees more than beauty. He sees a woman who moves with peace, a woman who carries strength, but not in competition with him. She's strong in her softness. She's powerful in her patience. She's wise in her silence. And that moves him in ways he can't explain because deep down, every man wants that kind of peace he's tired of. The noise, the pressure, the mass. And when he finds a woman whose energy doesn't demand but understands, it breaks him open in the best way. And that's when the real connection begins. You know, sometimes people think men don't feel deeply that. They don't crave emotional connection. But let me tell you something. When a man is touched on a soul level, he remembers you for life. It's not about how much time you spent together. It's about how you made him feel about himself in your presence. You made him want to grow. You made him want to be gentle. You made him feel worthy. Even when he was still fighting his demons, you didn't try to fix him. You accepted him in his process. And that's rare because most women try to love a man into changing. But the woman who truly touches his soul doesn't force him. She inspires him. She becomes his mirror and his motivation without ever saying a word. When you touch his soul, he starts to protect you differently. Not because you asked him to, but because something inside him feels the need to honor what you bring to his life. He respects your space, your emotions, your boundaries. He starts to show up more consistent, not because of obligation, but because his heart tells him this is something worth keeping. This is the peace I prayed for. This is the calm my chaos needed. And no matter how tough he acts outside with you, he softens. And that softness scares him sometimes because it's new, but it's also the most real thing he's ever felt. He may pull back sometimes, not because he doesn't care, but because he's trying to understand what he's feeling. He's trying to protect what's growing inside him. A man touched on a soul level will remember your laughter in his darkest nights. He'll remember your silence when you didn't argue. He'll remember your strength when life broke him down. He'll remember the way you looked at him when he had nothing to give and you still stayed present. That's what makes him think long after you're gone. That's what makes him come back, even when pride tells him not to, because that kind of energy isn't found everywhere. You gave him something that touched the depths of his heart. You spoke to a part of him that nobody else took. Time to understand. And that's rare energy. That's divine connection. And once it happens, it never fades. When you touch a man's soul, you don't chase his validation. You don't beg for his attention. You simply know your worth. You move with grace. You carry yourself with quiet confidence, and that shifts him because he realizes he can't play games with you. He can't bring half love to a woman who loves whole. He can't offer temporary attention to someone who gives eternal energy. And that's when he starts to rise to your level. He starts to reflect your energy. He starts to match your peace and not your pressure. You make him want to love better, speak softer, show up stronger, and build something that lasts. Because when you touch his soul, you awaken his purpose. You see, a woman who touches a man's soul doesn't always come with loud energy. She comes with presence. She listens. She pays attention. She remembers the little things. She prays for him even when he doesn't ask. She believes in him even when he doubts himself. And when a man feels that it changes the way he moves in the world, he starts making better choices. He starts respecting himself more. He starts thinking legacy, not lust. He starts protecting, not playing. And that's because you poured into him, not with conditions, but with care. And that kind of love makes him want to do better, not because he has to, but because he finally wants to. When you touch a man's soul, he begins to see that love isn't supposed to hurt. You're supposed to heal. And you become his safe place, not because you fix everything, but because you don't add to his chaos. Your peace becomes his addiction. Your vibe becomes his comfort. Your understanding becomes his medicine. And that's the kind of love that doesn't fade in time. That's the kind of bond that doesn't need validation because it's felt deep within his being. He'll think about you when he succeeds because you saw him when he was struggling. He'll think about you when he smiles because your words helped him. Remember, he could, and even if life separates you, your energy stays in his heart because you became a part of his story. But don't ever mistake touching a man's soul for losing yourself. It's not about giving all your energy. It's about giving from a place of fullness. It's about knowing that your love is valuable, that your softness has power, that your boundaries are sacred. Because when you move from self-respect, that's when your energy touches deep. That's when a man feels you, not just as a woman, but as a force of light. And that's the kind of energy he can't forget. That's the kind of presence that follows him even when you're silent. He'll see you in things that remind him of peace. He'll hear your voice when he's about to make the wrong choice. He'll feel your energy in moments of stillness because you didn't just love him, you elevated him. You touched his soul when you made him feel safe enough to be real. When you didn't laugh at his vulnerability, when you didn't turn his silence into rejection, when you gave him space to breathe, but still held space for his heart. And that's something men remember for life, because the truth is, deep down, every man is searching for peace, not perfection. He's searching for understanding, not control. He's searching for a connection that feels like home. And when he finds it, it rewires him forever. So if you've ever loved a man that deeply, know this: your energy didn't go unnoticed. Even if he never said it, even if he walked away, he felt it in his spirit. He'll carry that feeling long after the words are gone because you touched something that no one else could. And maybe that's why he'll always have a soft spot for you. Maybe that's why he still checks your page. Maybe that's why he still remembers your smile. Because soul connections don't expire. They transform, they grow, they guide. And even if you're not in his life anymore, you left a mark that will never fade. And if you're hearing this tonight, remember that touching a man's soul isn't about proving your love. It's about being authentic. It's about showing up with purity. It's about staying true to your light, because when your heart is pure, it reaches places no words can go. It speaks directly to the soul. And that's why when you touch a man that deeply, you'll never have to chase what's meant for you. The energy will always find its way back. The love will always recognize your light, and the peace you gave will always echo in his spirit. Because some connections were written long before you met. They were meant to awaken something divine in both of you. And once that happens, nothing can erase it. When you truly touch a man's soul, you awaken something inside him that no amount of beauty, fame, or attention could ever reach. You see, when a woman connects with a man beyond his surface, beyond his ego, beyond his charm, she becomes unforgettable. She becomes the peace his spirit didn't even know it was searching for. Because every man can find company, but not every man can find connection. Every man can find attraction, but not every man can find alignment. And when you bring that alignment into his world, his entire sense of what love is begins to shift. He starts to feel your presence in moments when you're not even around. He starts to crave your energy more than your body. Your words start echoing in his mind when he faces life's storms. Your silence starts speaking louder than anyone else's voice. Because now you're not just someone he talks to, you've become someone his soul remembers. A man who's truly been touched at that level doesn't move the same. He doesn't play the same games. Because you've reached a place in him that no one else took the time to reach. He may not tell you in words, but you'll feel it in how he looks at you, how he listens when you speak, how he respects your boundaries, and how his energy shifts when he's around you. He's not chasing attention anymore because he's already found depth. And depth is something that can't be replaced. He can meet 1,000 faces, but your spirit will keep calling him back home because the connection wasn't built from lust or need. It was built from peace and purpose. And that's the kind of bond that doesn't fade, even when distance comes in between. Touching a man's soul isn't about doing everything right. It's about being real. It's about showing him your truth, your grace, your faith, your growth. It's when he sees your strength wrapped in softness, your boundaries wrapped in kindness, your love grounded in respect. That's when he starts realizing you're not like the rest. Because you're not performing love, you're living it. And that energy shifts something inside him. He begins to open up pieces of himself he's hidden from the world. Not because you forced him to, but because your presence made him feel safe enough to do so. That's the kind of influence a woman of peace has. She doesn't chase, she attracts by being whole. And her wholeness reminds him that healing is possible. You see, when you touch a man's soul, you remind him that love isn't supposed to be chaos. It's supposed to be calm. It's supposed to be growth. It's supposed to feel like home. You show him that a real woman doesn't just love the potential in a man. She loves his process. She honors his journey. And she respects the man he's becoming even when he's still learning to stand tall. And that right there changes everything. Because most men are used to being wanted for what they can give, not for who they are. But when you see him as he is and still choose to love him from a place of grace, that touches something eternal in him and he'll never forget it. A man can forget a woman's looks, but he'll never forget the woman who made him feel seen, respected, understood. He'll never forget the one who prayed for him when he didn't even believe in himself. He'll never forget the woman who held space for his silence without demanding words. He'll never forget the woman who reminded him that softness is not weakness and that strength doesn't have to come with pride. He'll never forget the woman who believed in his better days, even when he didn't have proof, because that kind of love doesn't fade. It's planted deep in the soul. And it blooms even in the hardest seasons. Every man deep down is looking for peace, not perfection. He's searching for a woman who knows who she is, who carries herself with quiet confidence, who doesn't need to compete with anyone because she's rooted in her worth. That's the woman who touches a man's soul without even trying, because her energy speaks before her words do. She doesn't chase validation. she walks in alignment. She doesn't beg for love, she becomes love. She doesn't demand attention, she commands respect just by being authentic. And that's what melts a man's guard. That's what disarms his fears. That's what makes him see her not as another chapter, but as the whole story. When you reach that space, something spiritual happens. It's not about games anymore. It's not about who texts first or who acts distant. It's about connection that transcends distance. It's about an energy that stays even when you both need space. When you touch a man's soul, your absence doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like reflection. He starts realizing that not every woman brings peace, and that peace was his blessing all along. He starts replaying moments in his head, your laughter, your calm tone, your patience, your words of encouragement, and suddenly what he once took for granted becomes sacred. He starts wanting to protect the very energy he once overlooked. You see, a real connection doesn't require constant noise. It grows in silence. It's felt in energy. It's understood in the way you both show up without forcing it. That's why when you touch a man's soul, even if life pulls you in different directions, the universe keeps aligning you in spirit, because real energy doesn't die, it transforms. And sometimes the distance isn't a goodbye, it's a test of understanding. It's a reminder of what's real. It's a call to both grow so that when you meet again, you meet with maturity, with peace, with purpose. Because once a man's soul has been touched by genuine love, nothing else will ever feel right until he aligns with that again. So never underestimate your energy, your love, your softness, your presence. Because when it's rooted in authenticity, it changes lives, it changes men, it changes hearts, and it's not about being perfect. It's about being real enough to leave an imprint that can't be erased. It's about embodying love so pure that it makes even the most guarded man believe in something deeper again. And when that happens, he won't just remember you, he'll grow because of you. And that's the power of touching a man's soul. When you touch a man's soul, you begin to see the layers that most people never took the time to understand. You start to see beyond his confidence, his composure, his walls. You begin to sense the parts of him that are tired but still fighting, the places he hides behind laughter, the pain he covers with pride, and somehow you don't try to fix him, you just make him feel seen. And that is where healing begins, because a man's soul doesn't open to perfection, it opens to presence, to safety, to peace. When he feels your spirit, doesn't judge his wounds, but holds space for them, something inside him begins to soften. His voice becomes quieter. His guard starts to melt. And he begins to show you the version of him he doesn't show the world. A man's soul remembers energy. He might forget your words, but never your tone. He might forget your face, but never your peace. He might forget moments, but never the way your presence made him feel like he could breathe. And when you touch his soul, you become that quiet place in his chaos, the calm that brings him back to center, the light that reminds him who he really is, not who he pretends to be. Because in a world where everyone demands from him, your energy gives, your silence heals, your love grounds him, and that changes everything. See, when you reach a man's soul, you're no longer dealing with just his mind or his emotions. You're dealing with his truth. And his truth may not always be pretty. It may be guarded, messy, unsure. But your patience, your warmth, and your honesty start building a bridge. And he starts to walk across it. slowly, carefully, because he's learning something he hasn't felt in a long time. Safety, not the kind that comes from control, but the kind that comes from trust. That's when his loyalty deepens, his focus shifts, his energy begins to mirror yours. Because when a man feels that level of connection, he doesn't want to lose it. Most people think touching a man's soul is about doing more, saying more, proving more, but it's really about being still. It's about being aligned with who you are. It's about knowing that your value doesn't come from how much you give, but from how deeply you love. With awareness, you don't need to chase validation. You don't need to beg for presence, because the energy you carry speaks before your words ever do. And when you know who you are, that confidence radiates. It commands respect without demanding it. It attracts what's meant for you. And that's exactly the kind of energy that pulls a man's spirit closer without you even trying. You know you've touched a man's soul when he starts changing without realizing why. He becomes more intentional, more peaceful, more grounded. He starts thinking before reacting. He starts praying instead of panicking. He starts realizing that love doesn't have to be dramatic, to be deep. It doesn't have to be loud, to be real. And that realization comes from being in your presence. Your patience teaches him balance. Your consistency teaches him trust. Your confidence teaches him self-respect. Your boundaries teach him value. And all of that is done without force. It's done through grace, through authenticity, through stillness. Every man craves peace, even when he doesn't know how to ask for it. And when you bring that peace, he might resist at first, because chaos feels familiar and peace feels foreign. But once he feels the difference, once he experiences the way your energy settles his restlessness, he begins to crave that peace more than anything. And that's when he realizes that no one else compares. Because connection built on soul isn't about excitement, it's about stability. It's about peace that stays even when emotions shift. It's about love that listens even in silence. And that kind of connection never truly fades. When you touch a man's soul, you awaken his purpose. You remind him of who he was before the world told him to toughen up, to hide his emotions, to act like nothing affects him. You remind him that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's strength wrapped in courage. You remind him that real masculinity is not about dominance, it's about direction, not about control, but protection. And he begins to evolve not because you told him to, but because your presence made growth feel safe. That's the kind of influence love is supposed to have. Not one that demands change, but one that inspires it. Sometimes when you touch a man's soul, he won't even know how to process it. He might pull back. He might go quiet. Not because he doesn't care, but because you've reached a place in him he wasn't prepared to open. You've touched something sacred, and he needs time to understand what he's feeling. Don't chase that space. Honor it, because your stillness in that moment says more than words ever could. It tells him that your love isn't desperate. It's divine. That your connection isn't based on fear, but on faith. And faith gives space for people to grow. You see, most people talk about love in surface terms, attraction, chemistry, attention, but real love, soulful love, goes deeper. It's spiritual. It's intuitive. It's felt more than it's spoken. And when you touch someone's soul, you both change. You start to see the world differently. You start to view pain as purpose, silence as strength, distance as development, because energy that deep doesn't fade, it evolves. And even if you both go your separate ways, The lessons remain, the impact stays, and the energy lingers like a quiet echo of something divine. Touching a man's soul means showing up as your highest self, not your fearful self. It means loving without losing yourself, giving without draining yourself, caring without controlling. It means standing in your truth so powerfully that your presence becomes healing. It means leading with grace, because grace disarms what ego defends. And when you do that, you awaken something pure in him, something that reminds him what love is supposed to feel like, and he'll never see love the same again. There's a kind of peace that comes when two souls connect on that level. It's not about perfection. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about mutual respect, mutual energy, mutual understanding. It's about knowing that sometimes silence says what words can't. It's about holding space for growth. It's about forgiving without losing boundaries. It's about seeing the good in someone, even when they're still learning to see it in themselves. That's what touching a man's soul looks like. It's patient, it's strong, it's quiet, but it's powerful enough to change everything. The truth is, when a man has felt a woman's soul in that way, he can't unfeel it. He might try to distract himself. He might try to act detached, but deep down, he knows that what you gave wasn't normal. It wasn't temporary. It was divine. And one day, whether it's weeks or years later, he'll realize that you weren't just another connection. You were the peace that his soul had been searching for. And no matter where life takes him, your energy will always remind him of what real love feels like. When you touch a man's soul, you don't just leave memories. You leave, meaning you become a part of his spiritual journey, his evolution, his awakening. And that's not something that fades, because souls that meet on that level don't just cross paths by accident. They're aligned by purpose. They're connected by growth, and they're remembered by energy. That's why even when the world changes, energy like that always finds its way back. Not necessarily to repeat the past, but to remind both hearts of how far they've come. So don't underestimate your power. Don't question your worth when someone doesn't know how to receive you. Your energy is not too much. It's just meant for those who are ready to be real, those who are ready to love beyond surface, those who are ready to grow. You're not here to convince anyone of your value. You're here to embody it, to walk in it, to live in such alignment that your presence becomes a blessing. And when you do, the right energy will always recognize you. The right man will always rise to meet you. Because the woman who can touch a soul is the woman who was brave enough to heal her own first. That's the beauty of real connection. It doesn't rush. It doesn't compete. It doesn't fear loss. It simply trusts that what's meant will stay and what's not will teach. Because when you love from your soul, you understand that every experience has purpose. Every bond has meaning. Every ending carries wisdom, and every love that touches the soul leaves an imprint that time can't erase.